to another place. And I teach this in work environments, in school environments, universities, and communities. And we do this to activate cultures of well-being around the globe. What we have learned on the ground as in my travels is that as we have been redefining well-being as the highest form of equity, what I have learned is that we know that equity is not our portion, and that it's going to be our responsibility to create these cultures of well-being. And we do that whether we do it online or offline. But today we're talking about online community group work and what that looks like in a group environment. So today's group we're talking about is a task group. And a task group is, these are the most common groups, and they're used by organizations and agencies everywhere. You may have never even heard of this term, but you might already be using it, right? So I'm really, really excited to share with you terminology through this group work primer. So these groups are primarily groups like your task force, your committees, your ad hoc committees, your planning groups. You may even have like a staff development group. That's a task group. A treatment group. Say, for example, you are working in schools and you have IEPs. That's a task group, a group that's called to do a particular task. Say you're in a hospital setting and you are a management care team. That is a task group that is called to manage the care of a cohort of patients. And so then you have your social action groups. So when I think about that, I think about community organizers who are organized to for a certain task, like maybe you're looking to get a bill signed or something implemented, or maybe you're looking at building community around a project or something, maybe a municipal thing, maybe you've got a pilot going on. You are called to do a specific task, and that's called a task group. So that's your social action. Then you have your discussion, your task discussion groups. Maybe you are called to be a think tank. There's all sorts of discussion groups. Then there's your study circles. Study circles, for example, as a PhD student, I'm a part of a PhD community group, and I'm there to provide support to my fellow PhD, those who are going through the program. I finished the program, so I'm able to, add some value to those who might want to know, next steps, or may be having some challenges, because going through the PhD program is not easy. And so I wanted to just share that you have the study task groups as well. So these groups are they are common in community, business, education settings. I also said hospitals, community groups, education groups, and schools. So there is a host of ways to use a task group. These groups are commonly develop skills, right? They're used to develop skills, maybe an assessment. Like I have a group that specifically, one of our first things we do is measure their strength zone, which is where that place where it identifies your strength, where you are most likely to succeed, so that you are on the right path, whether that's in school, whether that's in work, whether that's in community, wherever that is. I think that that's something that we have to have a whole nother conversation about. But I think it's a very important, assessing people is a very, very important thing we need to do these days, because I realized that even through my own story, how I almost fell through the crack, but because of my resilience and me being able to stand in my strength automatically, understanding where my gifts were, that I was able to, succeed or move beyond the deficit that I felt in that moment. Another thing that they use these groups for, again, is training. You could train people. Like, for example, this is a group work primer. So in the course that I teach over in IMWE, I use my collegiate skills to teach group work. So training, a training group. How about a workforce development group? Maybe even you could use this type of task group to do that as well. You could have a task group for program development. Program development, say you, for example, you see a problem in the community and you are wanting to you be the problem solver, right? And so by doing that, you can call a task group together, or a focus group, or a community of leaders, an advisory group, so that you all can come together to create a program or address the need in the community, maybe even develop a needs assessment, move towards a common goal. So these groups, they focus the application of group dynamics, principles, and the processes, right? To do what? To improve practice and foster accomplishment of identified work goals. For example, I said over here, maybe your work goals are development skills, assessment, training, program development, consultation, or maybe even performance evaluation. I remember going through a performance evaluation on my job, and they brought in all sorts of outside evaluators, right? They paid big bucks for these evaluators to come from the outside. Of course, this is a big organization, but they pay for these evaluators to come in from the outside to measure the performance of the entity, to see whether they should do more or do less, or where could their monies, where could their resources best be used. So they use this also in program evaluation as well. And you're never too small to get a program evaluation, by the way. That's a critical thing to see if you are utilizing your resources in the right way. So again, this fosters accomplishment of identified work goals. Your participants and your leaders, they typically want to jump into the meat of things. Have you ever formed a group where they just want to get into it? They just want to get started right away, but you haven't even gotten through the process of learning them, understanding them, getting to know them, having conversations with them. This process, when you don't do that, it can cause a level of dysfunction. So when you don't go through the group process, the process of understanding what that looks like, it can cause problems. We cannot be riveted on content concerns all the time, what we want to teach, without bringing our participants along. Participants will have little appreciation for process issues in the success of the group if you don't stop and understand them, see them, hear them, and understand them. So there are interpersonal issues, and when those interpersonal issues are ignored, it will stunt the growth of their cooperation and collaboration. So even when we start a meeting, we start those meetings, we don't just open the camera and start the meeting, because when you do start the meeting, you don't even know how people are showing up to the meeting. So it's really important that we facilitate that time to see, hear, and understand how our people are showing up, because there are so many variables as it relates to well-being, that even our members of our task force, our committees, our organizations, in our jobs, our leadership are going through as well, that we have to take the time to address, to see where people are, meet them where they are, address the interpersonal issues that are going on. When this is ignored, it'll stunt the growth of their cooperation in and collaboration. So interpersonal issues will intensify, and your group goals will not be met if you do not stop and take time within your group to understand what the process looks like, what the process should be. The process and relationships are essential. So how does interpersonal climate relate to achieving the purpose and goal of the group? Learning interpersonal skills for working on a team is enhanced when participants can practice these skills in a group setting. One of the things that, for example, in the task, in the not necessarily task group, but this in the group where I am actually doing capacity building with We program, I have, as I teach the concept, it's an intensive. So it's as an intensive, there's a lot of work. Now, even though it's an intensive, does not mean that I don't have the responsibility as a leader to take them through proper processes, which means I have to engage with them. I have to take them through discussion so that I can see where they are, how they're doing, how are they showing up, what can I do differently. So it's all a part of the process. Even when especially when you're dealing with adult learners, we're all adults, but again, we're all showing up with our bucket of variables, right? So again, as I move through this process of teaching the group work primer, I'm going to be introducing you to task groups. I'm going to be introducing you to how to form a group, how to propose a group, identify an audience that you want to support in the group. All of these things are critical to you understanding group processes for a multicultural society, especially when you are dealing with the social justice approach. In our society, with all the work that we are doing, we are required to understand the world around us. And then we're also required to offer, ethical considerations, understand cultures that may be different from ours, and all the things. And so really quickly, I'm